Yu Qingfei met Su Pu again at a freshman mixer in college. In the KTV room, the girls from the English department were as beautiful as flowers, smiling brightly, while the guys from the computer science department were wide-eyed with excitement, eager to make a move. In college, mixers were just a pretext for friendly student interactions, a way to bring together the monks and nuns for a game of red string matchmaking. At first, Yu Qingfei didn't notice Su Pu. It wasn't until they played Truth or Dare and the bell passed to the corner where the girls from the nunnery started teasing. Su Pu, finally caught you. You haven't sung or spoken all night. Come on, choose Truth or Dare. Yu Qingfei paused, his hand holding the juice frozen in midair. Maybe it was just someone with the same name, he thought as he glanced over, feeling an inexplicable mix of excitement and unease, but in the flickering lights, he couldn't see anything clearly. Soon, the voice from the corner confirmed his suspicion. The previous champion had gone easy, asking a simple question, "What's your biggest wish?" But the answer they got was explosive. Without hesitation, the girl named Su Pu replied calmly, "To get married, to someone who can support me and my brother for life." The room fell silent. Yu Qingfei's mouthful of juice sprayed out at the same moment, completely untimely. He knew that voice, and its owner, all too well. All eyes turned towards him, but Yu Qingfei stayed composed, clapping his hands exaggeratedly and saying, "What a coincidence. My lifelong dream has been to support my future wife without any worries." The room erupted in laughter, and the awkwardness dissolved. Only then did Yu Qingfei finally see the plain and indifferent face in the corner. Unfortunately, while one was filled with excitement, the other was utterly calm. It seemed true to Su Pu's nature. Once she decided something, she stuck to it. After that incident, did she really consider him a stranger? After the mixer, Yu Qingfei's dorm mates each found a target to pursue and even urged him to chase Su Pu, going as far as to gather all her information for him. They called it the A-plan to melt the Ice Queen. Yu Qingfei found it both amusing and frustrating. He wanted to shout during their late-night chats, "You ignorant mortals." In fact, he and Su Pu had already been together before. They had not only met in high school but had been desk mates for 2 years. Yu Qingfei's most vivid impression of Su Pu was money-hungry, extremely money-hungry. Su Pu was a kind of good student he had never seen before. She never hid her homework notebooks, openly displayed her class notes, and even allowed others to copy her answers during exams. But everything had a price. Even at a young age, she was as shrewd as a seasoned merchant, unwilling to yield a penny. What Yu Qingfei admired most about Su Pu was that she once took on business from 3 different grades in a single day, writing 8 completely different essays tailored to each client. Yu Qingfei was stunned and blurted out a question he had been holding in for a long time. "Would you starve to death if you didn't make this money?" Su Pu glanced at him indifferently and continued working on someone else's test paper. Just when Yu Qingfei thought she wouldn't answer, or would only do so if paid, Su Pu quietly said 8 words, "I wouldn't starve, but I'd die of stupidity." Yu Qingfei was taken aback. Before he could grasp what she meant, a curious thought popped into his head, and he couldn't help but ask, "Hey, what's your price list?" Yu Qingfei never lacked money, nor did he struggle academically. Despite sitting together for so long, he had never done business with Su Pu. Su Pu didn't reject the idea. So, as Yu Qingfei asked about each item, Su Pu calmly quoted a price. How much to copy homework? What about running errands during breaks to buy snacks? Keeping watch during self-study to see if the teacher is coming? And what about dating me? As expected, Su Pu's voice halted immediately. Yu Qingfei felt a bit smug, but his heartbeat quickened. His original intention was to see how far Su Pu would go for money, but at that moment, he felt a mix of anxiety and anticipation he couldn't quite explain. He thought Su Pu would angrily retort, "Bastard, do you think having a little money makes you special?" But reality often surprises. Yu Qingfei never expected the response to be a counter-move. Su Pu turned to him, their eyes meeting as she casually twirled the pen in her hand, expressionless, and said, "How much do you think you're worth?" And so, after a year and a half of being desk mates, Yu Qingfei and Su Pu somehow inexplicably yet naturally ended up together. Everything seemed to change, yet it also felt like nothing had changed. Yu Qingfei thought Su Pu was crazy, but he thought he was even crazier. But strangely enough, he actually enjoyed this crazy feeling. At least, on that night after evening self-study, when he quietly walked with Su Pu by the artificial lake, and in the darkness, held her hand for the first time, his heart raced. It was an experience like no other. Su Pu was clearly flustered too. After coughing twice, she awkwardly stammered, "H holding hands is extra." Yu Qingfei burst into laughter, realizing that Su Pu was trying to hide her nervousness. He found her reaction endearing and couldn't help but tease, "Do you also go by the name of landlord?" The night wind brushed against their faces, lifting the corners of their eyes and their hair. Before they knew it, something seemed to have truly changed. Maybe, from the start, they both understood each other. The so-called price list was merely a pretext. But soon, Yu Qingfei realized how naive he had been. He had overestimated himself and underestimated Su Pu. To put it simply, it was a hopeless case of narcissism met with an honest and fair business approach. After the mixer, egged on by his group of mischievous friends, Yu Qingfei made up his mind to pursue Su Pu in earnest. When she went to the library, he would follow with a book, sitting not too far behind her. When she chose Tai Chi for her physical education class, he resolutely gave up his favorite basketball, joining the ranks of girls in colorful outfits, moving slowly to the rhythm of high mountains and flowing water, under the guidance of an old lady with an ethereal presence. When she joined the Confucian Society, he signed up too, with dubious intentions, standing under the flagpole at dawn with the others, reciting the Analects, while sneaking glances at her slender figure and thinking, Amitba, Confucius will forgive me for this. The most outrageous was when Yu Qingfei found out that Su Pu was selling groceries with door-to-door delivery service. After a fierce inner struggle, on a dark and windy night, under the watchful eyes of his entire dorm, he dialed the number for affordable grapes. True to her nickname of no profit too small to chase, Su Pu arrived swiftly. Not long after, she appeared with a large box, her face expressionless as she knocked on the door of the boys' dorm. The room full of men had expected quick service, but didn't anticipate it would be this fast. Bare-chested, they hurriedly put on their clothes, while the only one fully dressed Yu Qingfei sat in the center, seemingly calm but actually trembling, like a statue frozen in place. No, more like a petrified Buddha. But Su Pu didn't even look at him. She set the box down on the floor and said indifferently, "Pick what you want." The box was filled with snacks ranging from 50 cents to a few yuan, perfectly fitting the affordable grapes brand. The guys crowded around, pretending to carefully select, all the while giving Yu Qingfei knowing looks. Yu Qingfei got the hint, stared at Su Pu, and grandly declared, "I'm treating. I'll buy everything." The dorm erupted in joy. "Stick with Brother Fei, and you'll never worry about food and drink." Amidst the pointed commotion, Su Pu remained silent, not even raising her eyelids as she handed over the goods, took the money, and picked up the now empty box to leave. Yu Qingfei's smile froze on his face. As he exchanged puzzled looks with his boisterous friends, he felt like a nouveau riche dragged into the middle of a stage, only to be slapped by the monkey trainer for a poor performance. His friends comforted him, saying, "Without the bitter cold, how can you smell the fragrance of plum blossoms?" So, for the next few days, Yu Qingfei made a call every day, ordering a large box of snacks. The waistlines of the dorm mates quickly expanded, and they began lamenting, "Brother Fei, at this rate, we'll get fat before we've even succeeded. We might lose our girlfriends before you've won over your future sister-in-law." Yu Qingfei hit them with a pillow. "Go away, like you even have girlfriends." Eventually, Yu Qingfei wised up and stopped buying snacks by the box. Instead, he took his time picking them out. The room full of men would squat on the floor, each taking a different snack. One a pack of QQ candies, another a bag of little fish snacks, often taking half an hour to choose. It was obvious what they were doing, deliberate to the point where anyone could see through it. This way, Su-Pu couldn't leave immediately, yet she never seemed angry, always leaning casually against the doorframe, as serene as a peaceful ink painting. Yu Qingfei tried to strike up a conversation several times, but she remained indifferent. Once, while picking out snacks, Yu Qingfei happened to look up and saw that Su-Pu had fallen asleep against the wall, her head lowered, a few strands of hair hanging down and shading her smooth forehead. Her eyelashes trembled slightly, and her breathing was soft and long. He suddenly realized how thin she was, her exposed wrists pale and fragile, as if they could snap with a touch. A wave of sorrow washed over him, and Yu Qingfei quietly shushed his friends, then carefully grabbed a jacket and gently covered Su-Pu with it. He knew she worked several part-time jobs, tutoring and programming, selling accessories at a stall by the school gate on weekends, and he'd heard she even stayed up all night grinding in games to sell high-level equipment. This couldn't simply be described as day and night. It was as if she was earning money with her life. But even with the school loan and various scholarships, Yu Qingfei had calculated it hundreds of times. The money she made each month was far more than the average student's living expenses, yet it still seemed not to be enough. Was she really that short of money? After sitting together for a year and a half in high school and dating for another 6 months, Yu Qingfei thought he understood Su-Pu well. However, when he unintentionally witnessed a scene at the corridor corner, he realized that he didn't know her as well as he thought. Is it just about money? After chasing you for so long, why didn't you say so earlier? I wasted all that effort to figure it out. How about this? Whatever Yu Qingfei offers, I'll double it. Or triple, quadruple even. Money's not an issue. Just give me a straightforward answer. Hiding around the corner, Yu Qingfei clenched his fists as he recognized the tall guy standing in front of Su-Pu. He was a senior who had been pursuing Su-Pu since he entered school, and also the captain of the basketball team Yu Qingfei was on. Those harsh words stabbed at Yu Qingfei's heart. He couldn't help but clench his fists tightly. Any girl with a bit of dignity would have slapped him at this point and said, "Go to hell." Yu Qingfei didn't expect Su-Pu, with her calm demeanor, to act so fiercely, but at least she should have turned and walked away immediately, not giving this scoundrel any chance. But Yu Qingfei forgot that Su-Pu wasn't an ordinary girl. She was a money-obsessed landlady. As the setting sun climbed over the school building, Su-Pu's slender figure stood against the light, accepting that thick wad of cash in front of the overjoyed senior and began to count it, bill by bill, with serious focus. A rush of blood surged to Yu Qingfei's head, making him feel faint. Dizzy, he gritted his teeth and turned away, lacking the courage to stay and hear Su-Pu give the final, cruel answer. He had originally come to plan how to celebrate her birthday with her. Tomorrow was her birthday, coincidentally on a weekend, and he wanted to take her cycling in the countryside to see the wheat fields she had always wanted to see. But now there was no point. It was already a deal gone bad. Why humiliate himself by insisting on it, or deceive himself further? Yu Qingfei thought, unlike Su-Pu, he still had that little bit of dignity. Su-Pu waited for Yu Qingfei all day, from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. She had taken a long bus ride to the outskirts of the city, carrying a basket of food, standing at the place they had agreed on, with the mountains and rivers behind her. He had said he would give her a surprise. By noon, the weather had changed suddenly. What had been a bright spring day turned dark as clouds gathered, and rain began to pour. Su-Pu, sheltering from the rain and protecting her basket, thought about how her little brother, Yi-Tao, had cried and clung to her when she left, and she felt a pang of guilt. After all, it was her first time not spending her birthday at home with him. She wondered if Aunt Zhang next door was taking good care of him. He was terribly afraid of thunderstorms. In her anxious waiting, Su-Pu finally gave up. Soaking wet, she boarded the last bus back to the city. She thought perhaps the sudden change in weather had canceled their plans, and without a phone, Yu Qingfei couldn't contact her. Comforting herself this way, Su-Pu never expected to see Yu Qingfei drunk on the street, with another girl beside him, when she returned to the snack street near home. Su-Pu's face turned pale as water dripped from her soaked clothes, but all she got from Yu Qingfei was, "Oh, Sorry, I forgot. Supu didn't ask who the girl was. She simply tightened her lips and went forward to support Yu Qingfei, knowing he wasn't usually so unreliable. She worried something might have happened to him. But Yu Qingfei, like a pile of mud, slumped against her and, with a sly smile, said, "Little landlady, how much will it cost to help me up?" His tone was no longer the playful teasing she was used to. It carried a hint of scorn that had never been there before. Supu withdrew her hand, taking a step back, her expression growing cold. "What do you mean by that?" Yu Qingfei chuckled, drunkenly pulling out his wallet, and said each word slowly. "What I mean is, I'm tired of you. I'm dumping you. Here's your breakup fee. It's a good amount, right?" As he spoke, he threw a thick stack of brand new bills, which hit Supu's face hard, scattering pink notes like rain. Supu trembled, her face turning as white as a sheet. Yu Qingfei burped, pulling the girl beside him close, and laughed at Supu. "See this? She's the new one. Better than you. Prettier, right? Oh, by the way, did you really wait in the rain until now?" "To be honest with you, I didn't forget. I tricked you on purpose because I thought it would be fun. After all, I spent the money. It would have been a waste not to use it for some entertainment." At that moment, Yu Qingfei was thoroughly drunk. His thinking was simple. Rather than waiting for Supu to dump him, he might as well break up with her first. So he deliberately stood her up and even called his cousin to wait on her way home. He had gone to the bank early to withdraw new bills, and with great satisfaction, he flung the money at the face of the landlady, who only cared about money. It felt good, so good, yet the satisfaction was quickly replaced by a searing pain in his chest, especially when Supu, her face pale, stared at him for a long moment before slowly crouching down to pick up each scattered bill. Yu Qingfei felt as if he couldn't breathe. It really is a substantial breakup fee. With the money gathered, Supu mumbled to herself, then looked up at Yu Qingfei with a smile that showed no trace of sadness. "All right, I'm leaving. Take care. Goodbye." With that, she really left, walking away without looking back, money in hand. Yu Qingfei couldn't believe it. He opened his mouth to speak, but then suddenly buried his face in his cousin's shoulder and began to sob uncontrollably. Supu was a person who meant what she said. From that day on, she truly treated him like a stranger. She even requested the teacher to change her seat, and throughout their final year in high school, she never spoke to him again. At first, Yu Qingfei was puzzled that after breaking up with him, Supu didn't get together with that senior. It wasn't until he couldn't hold back anymore and challenged that senior to a one-on-one in the basketball court, finally pinning him to the ground in anger, that he learned the full truth, the part he hadn't seen after he walked away. After he left, Supu carefully counted out the portion of money she had earned for writing essays for the senior and then unhesitatingly flung the remaining money in his face, just as Yu Qingfei had done to her. The senior was stunned. He could only watch as Supu turned to leave, coldly telling him, "This is the last payment for our deal. Don't ever come looking for me again." Yu Qingfei, laughing and crying, ran to find Supu, gesturing wildly as he explained everything. Supu listened with a blank expression, then shook off his hand, stepped back, and said indifferently, "Don't misunderstand. I don't like you. I was only with you for the money." Yu Qingfei would never know that after getting soaked in the rain that day, Supu came down with a high fever. She still had to comfort her little brother, Yi Tao, who was frightened by the lightning, and she ended up falling out of bed in the middle of the night, unconscious. Luckily, Yi Tao, scared and crying, knocked on the neighbor's door, and Aunt Zhang rushed Supu to the hospital in time. Otherwise, the consequences could have been disastrous. But what was the point of telling Yu Qingfei any of this? They were destined to be from different worlds. She might never be able to ask him, "Do you know what PKU, phenylketonuria, is?" After this experience, she saw things clearly. Prolonged pain was worse than short-term pain, so she could only leave him with her back turned once more, never looking back. It was only then that Yu Qingfei finally realized what he had lost. It wasn't just losing his seatmate of 2 years, or the girl who helped him with his notes, or even the landlady, who blushed when they held hands by the lake. It was losing the chance to open Su Pu's heart, losing the opportunity to melt the ice around it. She was like a hedgehog. Once hurt, she raised her quills and would rather bleed than let him get close again. Because if you don't trust, you can't be hurt. And at that time, Yu Qingfei didn't know that on Su Pu's birthday, she had originally planned to gather the courage to share an unknown secret about herself and her brother, Yi Tao. She trusted him, hoping he could walk the path with them, believing he could walk the path with them because going alone was too hard. But in the end, her hope was a reflection on water, her belief a flower in the mirror. She would still have to walk alone. That time when Yu Qingfei impulsively draped his jacket over the sleeping Su Pu, it triggered an immediate consequence. Su Pu suddenly woke up and met his eyes directly. From then on, their daily half-hour was no more, and Yu Qingfei's roommates no longer had to worry about putting on weight. Stop it. Stop it. Everyone get up. I'm done selling. Don't call me again. She hastily brushed off Yu Qingfei's jacket, looking flustered and slightly angry. Without a word, she squeezed through the crowd, grabbed the large box, and rushed out the door. Yu Qingfei froze in that instant. His first reaction wasn't to chase after her, but to recall the movie, American Dreams in China, where after Su Mei left for abroad, Cheng Dongqing drank in the rain and said a particularly foolish and melodramatic line, "I feel like my youth has ended, and it's buried right here." Sure enough, Su Pu began, openly, avoiding Yu Qingfei. If she saw him in the library, she would turn and leave immediately. She stopped attending the Tai Chi class she had signed up for, applied for a change in classes for some unknown reason, and switched to aerobics. She had even become a council member in the Confucian Society but abruptly quit without a word, never again joining Yu Qingfei for morning readings under the flagpole. Later, when Yu Qingfei was dragged out of bed in the dead of winter, shivering in the falling snow during a morning reading session while staring up at the red flag, he felt even more ashamed in front of Confucius. Yu Qingfei never knew that avoiding someone could be done to such an extreme. He no longer dared to press her too hard, fearing that Su Pu might be driven to the point of dropping out. After all, being at the same university as Su Pu felt like a gift from the heavens. After the college entrance exam, he heard that Su Pu's score was almost good enough for Tsinghua or Peking University, and he was utterly devastated. His own score wasn't bad either, more than enough to get into Z University, but the idea of following in Su Pu's footsteps to rekindle their relationship seemed like a far-fetched dream. As expected, when he heard from the class monitor that Su Pu's first choice was Peking University while his was Z University, he thought they would part ways, heading to different corners of the country. He was dejected. On the day the cutoff scores were released, the first thing he checked wasn't Z Universities, but Peking Universities, and to his astonishment, he discovered Su Pu missed the mark by 1 point, narrowly missing her goal. Yu Qingfei's feelings were complicated, a mix of emotions he couldn't quite describe. But never in his wildest dreams did he imagine that after many twists and turns, Su Pu would still end up at Z University. When he heard her voice at the KTV, he was beyond excited. Shamelessly, he believed it was fate giving him another chance, so he felt he had to cherish this opportunity and seize it. That night, Yu Qingfei dreamed of Su Pu, and the dream took him back to the scene of their high school graduation party. They were playing a game where the chosen person had to sing a song, with lyrics that included at least one character from their own name. He still remembered, he sang, "I want to fly higher, fly higher." The whole room burst into laughter, and after he finished singing, 2 girls from the class stood up simultaneously, shyly walked up to the stage, and courageously confessed their feelings while presenting flowers. Amid the uproar, Yu Qingfei was stunned and instinctively looked towards Su Pu in the crowd, but she had lowered her head. As the gathering was drawing to a close, the game finally landed on Su Pu. She had always been perceived as a bit of a penny pincher but otherwise quite low-key, so when she could no longer refuse, she reluctantly took the stage amidst the applause. With her long hair draped over her shoulders and dressed in a simple shirt, Su Pu stood on the stage, thought for a moment, and said, "I'll sing The Snail and the Oriole." Yu Qingfei never expected, in his wildest dreams, that he would one day hear Su Pu sing. She always claimed to have a terrible singing voice, but when she started, her voice flowed like a gentle stream, stunning everyone in the room. It was a familiar nursery rhyme, perfectly fitting with her name, Pu. Beside a grapevine so green and bright, a snail crawls slowly with all its might. Two orioles in the tree up high laugh and wonder, why, oh why? The grapes aren't ripe, they have a way to go. What are you doing, moving so slow? As her clear voice filled the room, everyone gradually fell silent. Perhaps it was because the party was nearing its end, and their high school days were soon to be over. An air of melancholy spread throughout the room. After tomorrow, just as the song suggested, they would each go their separate ways, pursuing their own destinies. Tears welled up in Yu Qingfei's eyes, blurring his view of Su Pu. He quickly turned away, struggling to choke back his sobs, becoming the first in the room to cry. The last activity of the evening was exchanging gifts. Yu Qingfei silently prayed to draw the gift that Su Pu had prepared. Before he could even open the small ball containing his number, the class monitor beside him snatched it away and tossed his own to Yu Qingfei. Here, let's swap. Mine's number 17, not my lucky number. Yu Qingfei playfully called him superstitious, but didn't argue, taking number 17 and waiting for his turn. When his number was finally called, he heard the most beautiful words in the world. Number 17, Su Pu's. Yu Qingfei froze for a moment, then immediately turned and kissed the class monitor on the cheek. The gift was a transparent glass bottle filled with grape seeds. When he pulled out the cork, a fresh scent wafted out, reminding him of the fragrance that always lingered around Su Pu, a scent he had come to cherish deeply. He closed his eyes, breathing it in over and over, until he found himself crying once more. At that moment, he was overwhelmed with sadness, thinking that if Su Pu really went to Peking University, he would spend the next 4 years at Z University clinging to this scent as his only way to remember her. What he didn't know was that Su Pu, standing in the shadows, watched it all. And as she blinked and turned to leave, something unspoken passed through the air, leaving a trace behind. Yu Qingfei felt that the class monitor was a lifesaver for him. He was feeling down, and when he called the monitor to talk about Su Pu, the monitor exclaimed, "What? She didn't go to Peking University." Yu Qingfei was stunned. Wasn't she just 1 point short? The monitor said, "What are you talking about? Don't you know she plays the bamboo flute? That's an extra 10 points." Yu Qingfei was bewildered. He listened as the monitor continued, explaining that Su Pu had never applied to Z University at all. Had she changed her first choice? By the way, you still have that graduation gift, right? Hee. I have to tell you the truth. Whoever got number 17 had to give it to you because the note underneath said, "For Yu Qingfei, do not disclose." Yu Qingfei's hand trembled as he realized something. He couldn't contain his excitement and interrupted the earnest monitor. "Monitor, I think my youth has begun, and it's blossoming right here." "But didn't you just say your youth was over, buried here?" "Monitor, let me treat you to a meal." He hung up the phone with a decisive click and rushed to the north gate. His heart, once heavy with despair, reignited with hope. It was the weekend, and Su Pu was supposed to be at the north gate selling her goods. Yu Qingfei hadn't bothered her for a month, and now he felt like he was flying there. As soon as he arrived at the north gate, he saw a group of rough-looking boys with dyed yellow hair surrounding Su Pu's stall. Despite their youthful appearance, they were clearly shaking her down for protection money. Su Pu, usually calm and reserved, was fiercely clinging to her cash box, her face flushed with anger. "I won't pay. Why should I give my hard-earned money to you? Stay away from my stall." Yu Qingfei felt a strange urge to laugh, but before he could, in the commotion, Su Pu accidentally stepped wrong, and there was a sickening crack. Her ankle had twisted. A string in Yu Qingfei's mind snapped. The world seemed to go still. In his rage, Yu Qingfei dealt with the thugs swiftly, sending the boys, now in tears, home to their mothers. As night fell and the streetlights flickered on, Su Pu, clutching her cash box in one hand and a bag of decorations in the other, was struggling to move with her injured leg. Before she could escape, Yu Qingfei swooped in and carried her on his back, rushing toward the school. She struggled but eventually gave in, resting her head on his shoulder and elbowing him while muttering, "You jerk." Yu Qingfei hurried toward the infirmary, enduring her curses with a sly smile. "I know everything now." He started with the graduation gift, moved on to the college applications, and mentioned how she had deliberately posted her cheap grapes ads under the boys' dorm, piecing together the clues. Finally, with a profound conclusion, he said, "So you had plans for me all along." Su Pu, embarrassed and enraged, couldn't free her hands and bit him hard. "Shameless. Don't say any more." Yu Qingfei winced in pain but couldn't help but smile, growing more smug as he recounted how she had used a compass to poke him while he slept during their Cold War in high school. As he spoke, his steps faltered when he noticed a wetness on his shoulder. He realized that Su Pu had buried her face in his neck, silently crying. It could be that she had accumulated too many grievances, letting them out, or perhaps it was relief at being rescued from trouble. Yu Qingfei analyzed her emotions, but Su Pu, with a sniffle, clarified, "It's not that. It's my ankle that hurts." Well, Yu Qingfei shrugged. If using her ankle pain as an excuse allowed her to drop her defenses and cry freely on his back, then let it be. As long as his grape girl was okay, that was enough for him. In the infirmary, Su Pu took out something Yu Qingfei had never expected, a bank card. "This is all the money you gave me before. I saved every penny and carried it with me, always wanting to find a chance to return it to you." Yu Qingfei stared at the card in her slender, pale hand for several seconds, trembling all over. He suddenly dropped to his knees, hugging Su Pu tightly around the waist and crying out loud, I was wrong. Don't be mad, landlord lady. I know everything now." Su Pu hugged him back fiercely, holding him close and crying heavily. "No, you don't know. There's so much you still don't know." The doctor, coming back with the medication, was startled by the scene. He wondered, "What's going on?" "She only had a sprained ankle. Why does it sound like she's lost a limb?" In the mature stage of a relationship, couples might typically have a conversation like this. "Darling, you can come home with me to meet my parents now." But for Yu Qingfei, who had been earnestly dating Su Pu for several months, the conversation was a bit different. "You can come home with me to meet my little brother." Seeing Su Pu's serious expression, Yu Qingfei had to stifle a laugh. Under the grapevine, he met Yi Tao, who was playing in the mud. Yu Qingfei realized how ignorant and shallow he had been. Yi Tao was a strikingly handsome boy, though he didn't resemble Su Pu. He was covered in mud, grinning foolishly, yet his eyes were pure and innocent, resembling a 6 or 7-year-old child. "Do you know what PKU is?" Su Pu asked this question, which she had never dared to ask before. She knew that there were two possible outcomes. Either Yu Qingfei would be completely integrated into her life, or he would be entirely pushed away. PKU stands for phenylketonuria, a recessive genetic disorder. In simple terms, it means that the body cannot metabolize ordinary food properly, leading to the accumulation of phenylalanine and its metabolic products in the body, causing irreversible damage to the nervous system. The direct consequence is intellectual disability. Patients cannot eat normal food without risking becoming mentally impaired. They must consume extremely expensive special foods their entire lives. Otherwise, they will slowly become unable to manage daily life. Both Su Pu and her brother Yi Tao were PKU patients. So, when Yu Qingfei once asked Su Pu if she wouldn't starve if she didn't make that extra money, Su Pu replied, "I won't starve, but I will become foolish." Without money, she couldn't afford the special food, and without it, she would have to eat ordinary food, gradually becoming mentally impaired. Just like her brother Yi Tao, who had given up his treatment, secretly swapping his special food for hers, leading to a decline in his mental faculties. They were not biological siblings. They had no parents. They grew up in the same orphanage and were adopted by the headmaster. The headmaster's surname was Su, and her husband's surname was Yi, so they named the siblings Su Pu and Yi Tao. There was a beautiful grapevine at the orphanage, a favorite spot for the children. During the grape harvest season, everyone would pick grapes together, enjoying cheerful times. When the orphanage closed due to financial issues, the headmaster took them to an apartment building and planted another grapevine downstairs. Grapes and grapevines, Pu and Tao, were inseparable. Su Pu and Yi Tao grew up together, received treatment together, and picked grapes from the tree together. Su Pu once thought they could continue like this forever, but life is not a fairy tale. Soon, the headmaster could no longer afford their expenses. The special food they needed was too expensive. One was manageable, but two was a burden. Yu Qingfei had once calculated that Su Pu could earn at least 10,000 a month. But 10,000 was nothing compared to the cost of protein powder and nutritional supplements. Even if the siblings economized, they couldn't afford them each month. The cost of special food was so high that the headmaster was constantly worried, even considering selling blood. At that time, Yi Tao was not yet 7 but was sensitive and aware of the family's predicament. One night, while getting up to use the bathroom, he accidentally overheard his parents talking. "If this continues, we'll have to give one up or abandon one." It was indeed a cruel choice, but it was the only option in their dire situation. Little Yi Tao, after returning to his room, couldn't sleep. He curled up in bed and cried, waking his sister Su Pu. Thinking he had a nightmare, Su Pu went to his bedside, walking barefoot to him. He grabbed Su Pu's hand, his eyes red from crying. "Sis, I don't want to be separated from you. I don't want to be separated." How could Su Pu understand how terrified Yi Tao was? He was afraid of being separated from her, of not being able to pick grapes with her, but more afraid of becoming the fool that others talked about. So, in that night when he was comforted by Su Pu and slept with her in his arms, the innocent and kind-hearted Yi Tao made a silent decision. If one of them had to be given up, he hoped it would not be his sister. He stopped eating the special food and secretly swapped his portion with Su Pu's. By the time everyone realized what had happened, Yi Tao had already become mentally impaired. The secret of the special food was finally revealed. The headmaster's wife found a letter in Yi Tao's piggy bank, a letter written with shaky handwriting, stained with tears. It was clear that Yi Tao had written it while crying. The entire letter was an apology. Yi Tao confessed to deceiving them and being a disobedient child, but he didn't want his parents to sell their blood, didn't want his sister to become foolish, didn't want to be separated from his family. At the end of the letter was the most beautiful wish he could think of as a child. If he wasn't too foolish by the next year's grape harvest, he wanted to pick grapes with his parents and sister. That was the first time Su Pu understood what despair truly meant. Holding her now mentally impaired brother, she cried until she could barely breathe. But the nightmare was far from over. 3 years later, their father was diagnosed with cancer, and the headmaster's wife died in a car accident while raising funds, leaving only a compensation settlement. Their father, unwilling to use the money, secretly removed the 4 and passed away on a cold, windy night. In one night, Su Pu's once poor but warm home collapsed completely. She was left with only the compensation, 2 urns of ashes, a disease called PKU, and a mentally impaired brother. Life did not crush her. Holding Yi Tao and crying, she looked around the empty room and through the window at the grapevine below, silently swearing, as long as her brother was still there and the grapevine was still there, home would still be there. So, she began working tirelessly, studying and taking care of Yi Tao, never giving up despite the hardships. She also continued eating the special food. She couldn't afford to become foolish. If she too became foolish, who would take care of her brother? Who would hold their crumbling home together? Her classmates privately called her greedy, but she didn't care. What mattered to her was Yu Qingfei, who was outstanding in every way, from his family background to his appearance, someone from a completely different world, someone she had liked for a long time but never dared to confess. She was stubborn and sensitive. She didn't want sympathy or to be a burden. Her love was deep, but her fear was deeper, so she chose to be like a hedgehog, covered in sharp spines. She hoped that one day, someone would not be afraid of her prickly exterior, would overcome all obstacles and embrace her despite the bloodshed, telling her that it was okay and that she still had him. It was only then that Yu Chengfei understood why, during a game of truth or dare, Su Pu's biggest wish was to get married to someone who can provide for me and my brother for the rest of our lives. And Su Pu finally realized that Yu Chengfei was not unfamiliar with PKU. When she mustered the courage to bring it up, Yu Chengfei was not surprised at all. His response was, "Of course I know, because my uncle is also a PKU patient." Su Pu probably never imagined that Yu Chengfei's uncle, like her, was a PKU patient who grew up needing special food. But not only did he persevere, he also went on to study abroad, specializing in biomedical research, and became an expert in PKU. Yu Chengfei had always admired his uncle, and there was something his uncle said before leaving to study abroad that Yu Chengfei would never forget. PKU patients aren't anomalies. In fact, many of them excel beyond their peers because it's only through hardship that one learns to cherish the hard-won moments in life, to truly understand strength and gratitude. Adversity is life's unique wealth. Perhaps it can be seen as a special gift from God. As the song goes, they are fireworks of a different color, and as long as they strive to shine, they will eventually leave their own dazzling mark in the sky. It's a beauty distinct from the blossoms of the earth, carrying the gentle, indestructible light of the moon. Under the grapevine, Yu Chengfei said to Su Pu, "Let's get married after we graduate from college." Su Pu asked, "Aren't you afraid I'll eat you out of house and home?" Terrified, absolutely terrified, but I'm even more afraid that the landlady might marry someone else and take my little brother away to suffer. Ugh, who's your brother? You're so shameless. Tao Tao loves me. If you don't believe it, ask him. Tao Tao, come here. Do you agree to let your sister marry me? What? You're so thick-skinned. Tao Tao, don't come over here, Yu. Don't corrupt my brother. Sunlight filtered through the green vines, and the laughter and playful teasing under the grapevine carried over the small courtyard, soaring into the clear sky, flying far, far away. That night, Yi Tao had a dream. He dreamed that the grapes had ripened, and his brother and sister were taking him to pick them, singing the childhood rhyme. On the front and back of the grapevine, the tender green leaves just began to sprout.